The literature, I had patients with heart and lung disease who needed urgent treatment. And I refused to let an illness, which lasted for 2 weeks at home, before they got sick enough to be hospitalized, I refused to let a patient languish at home with no treatment and then be hospitalized when it was too late. It was obvious. That was obvious in April that that was the case. So I used the best tools or drugs available at the time. And these are appropriately prescribed off-label. Remember, a label is an advertising label. A label isn't a scientific document. Sure, it's an appropriately prescribed off-label use of conventional medicine to treat an illness. And in May, I put together a team of doctors because the group that was facing the pandemic to the greatest degree was in Milan, Italy, so most of them were in the Corrical Italian Research Network. We summarized all we knew about the available drugs, and we published our findings in the August 8th issue of the American Journal of Medicine. And the title of that paper was The Pathophysiologic Basis and Rationale for Early Ambulatory Treatment. And it had a premise. There's two bad outcomes to COVID-19, hospitalization and death.
So today, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, today we're starting a little harder. So this guy, as you can see from the whole thing that you just heard, he's a guy, well, yeah, he knows what he's talking about when he's talking about chupacabra, right? So, it seems that whatever he says, we should follow, right? Especially if he was handling with the people from Italy where the things was getting very bad. He's informed, right? Not through YouTube, but through doctors, right? Okay, I guess what?
The second premise, if we don't do something before the hospitalization, we can never stop it. We can never stop it. And I have to tell you, and I was the lead author in that paper, but we had dozens of authors from Italy, India, UCLA, Emory. We had the best institutions in the United States. I can tell you the interesting thing was there was 50,000 papers in the peer-reviewed literature on COVID. Not a single one told a doctor how to treat it.
And that is the one part that I really wanted to talk to you guys about. The fact that they were trying to do something about it, but none of these papers told them exactly how to treat it. Like nobody was investing in that. I mean, maybe you can't cure the thing, but if you have like breathing issue, they can give you something. If you have inflammatory in your lungs or whatever, there are specific things they can help you to handle the chupacabra, right? But the fact that nobody is investing in that because everybody's like, you know what, we can just handle it with a bunch of little things, but nothing to prevent it early on, nothing to strengthen specific things. Especially when you have the thing, they don't really give you specific, clear indication how to handle it at home. I have an aunt, well, not an auntie, but it's my wife's auntie, but they sent her at home and they told her, take paracetamol. She was taking cortisone or something like that because she already had lung issue, and they said, hey, that's enough. You don't have to take anything else. They didn't tell her to eat healthy. They didn't tell her to take walks. No, just be safe, stay at home, far away from everybody, and poke. That's it. Everybody is focusing usually on that. If it gets worse, just call us and we will pick you up.
Not a single one. When does that happen? I was absolutely stunned. And when this paper was published in the American Journal of Medicine, it became a lightning rod. Oh my gosh, it became the most cited paper in basically all of medicine at that time. The world started, and boy, the world started knocking on my door. And I said, oh my Lord, I just can't believe what became untapped. And I had never been on social media before. My daughter, who was home from law school, was talking to her about it. She said, well, why don't you make a YouTube video? So I made a YouTube video with 4 slides from the paper. This is a peer-reviewed paper published in one of the best medical journals in the world. 4 slides. I even wore a tie and a suit, and she showed me how to record it in PowerPoint, and I posted it on YouTube. It went absolutely viral. And within about a week, YouTube said, you violated the terms of the community.
Does that make sense? A guy that knows what he's doing, trying to tell people what's up, right? Milan, doing the research and everything with India. Teamwork, right? Does that make any sense? There's like no information, and I actually agree with him. But he's the doctor, but even YouTube doesn't agree with him. Does that make any sense?
And that's when Senator Johnson's office got involved in Washington and said, oh my gosh, this is important scientific information to help patients in the middle of this crisis, and social media is striking it down. Based on what authority? Well, one thing led to another, and I became the lead witness for the U.S. Senate testimony on November 19th, 2020. And the reason why there was Senate testimony is because there was a near total block on any information of treatment to patients. A near total block. And so what had happened over time is that we had gotten into a cycle in America of no information on treatment. Patients actually think that the virus is untreatable.
I just called my auntie because I wanted to, well, that's not my auntie, it's my wife. I don't know why I keep saying that. She says there is no treatment. There is no cure. They just gave me a bunch of medicine. So I called her. I told her, when you went to the hospital, did they give you anything else? They said, yes, they gave me a bunch of stuff. I had to swallow like 4 pills daily. I'm not sure even if they were different, but the doctor told her the fact that you were already taking cortisone. I hope I'm saying the right name because it might be it calls cortisona in Spanish. So if any Spanish people might know, maybe I'm getting the names confused, but she was taking something for herself, breathing issue, and the doctor said that saved your life. And I was like, that's interesting. So if somebody was having like breathing issue and they were already taking that to handle the breathing issue, wouldn't it be like necessary to tell people that if you have this issue, go not to the hospital, but your nearest your health thing that you go before the hospital and tell them I have this issue, they might help you with that, and that way you might save yourself before you even go to the hospital. Why do I say that? Because I had a friend that passed away like that. He didn't have anything. They sent him to the freaking hospital. In the hospital, he got infected. And he's gone. And I'm like, you could have prevented it. He had already issues. But nobody told him, like, if you have this specific issue, take this, take this. No, they just sent him to the freaking hospital. There was no treatment. We can only treat you here in the hospital. And in the hospital, it got worse and it's the end, you know?
And so what happens is they go out to get a diagnosis. Now, I'm a COVID survivor. My wife in the galley is a COVID survivor. My father in a nursing home is a COVID survivor. You get handed a diagnostic test. It says, here, you're COVID positive. Go home. Is there any treatment? No. Is there any resources I can call? No. Any referral lines, hotlines? No. Any research hotlines? No.
That's true. There's nothing. You can call nobody. Well, you can call the doctor, a specific office, but they're going to tell you like the same thing. If you suggest them to take anything, usually they're going to say no because they don't want you to over-medicate yourself. And if you over-medicate yourself, maybe once you go to the hospital, maybe the medicine won't work. But then again, anybody can over-medicate themselves if they're sick. And they're not doing it because they trust your word. So if you give them clear instruction, they would obey. If somebody is obeying the laws of the chupacabra right now, right? And they're staying home and they're doing the best they can, why would you believe that if you suggest them specific medicine, they're going to just gulp them all like Skittles, like, I'm going to cure myself, rawr.
That's the standard of care in the United States. And if we go to any one of our testing centers today in Texas, I bet that's the standard of care. I bet that's the standard of care. No wonder we have had 45,000 deaths in Texas. The average person in Texas thinks there's no treatment.
Yeah, my auntie also doesn't think there is a treatment. She doesn't believe. She's like, no, we can't cure this. There's nothing we can do.
They don't even know about these EUA antibodies. You heard from a 90-year-old gentleman who got bamlanivimab. Terrific. Where's the focus? There's such a focus on the vaccine. Where's the focus on people sick right now? This committee ought to know where all these monoclonal antibodies are. They ought to know where all the treatment protocols are. They ought to have a list of the treatment centers in Texas that actually treat patients with COVID-19. So I led the initiative. The second paper was published in a dedicated issue of Reviews in Cardiovascular Medicine. Now I had 57 authors, including Dr. Urso, Dr. Emmanuel, lead doctors in Houston and San Antonio, all over. And it was another worldwide paper, and now we have it updated, integrated. So yes, we use drugs to affect viral replication. The antibodies are terrific. We can use intracellular anti-infectives in that box. We use corticosteroids and inflammatory drugs. The best anti-inflammatory drug is colchicine. You've probably never heard about it. In the largest, highest quality randomized trial, over 4,000 patients, double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial, there's a 50% reduction in mortality. No word of it. None. Complete block to anybody, colchicine. How can that be? How can that be? And then the most deadly part of the viral infection is thrombosis. So I have always treated my patients with something to treat the virus, something to treat the inflammation, and something to treat thrombosis, just as Dr. Urso had.
But in the end, he also mentioned there isn't like a one cure for COVID. You actually have to use a bunch of stuff in a specific package designed for specific people. So just like happened to Joe Rogan that took a bunch of type of medicine for his situation, everybody is so judgy about him, but it's like, hey man, I took what worked for me. He also agrees with that there's no one cure. So stop bombing any medicine that somebody wants to use to cure themselves because it's a package. You need to use the right one for the right situation, what's happening to your body. The idea that you just want to say, this one is bad, we will never use this one, it's FDA approved or whatever. I get what you're trying to say, but just assuming that one is bad when in a package it can help somebody very well, I find it kind of disingenuous. But hey, he's the doctor. If you don't believe me, watch the whole freaking video.
And I have very, very sick patients, and I've lost 2. But I have to tell you, what has gone on has been beyond belief. How many of you have turned on a local news station or a national cable news station and ever gotten an update on treatment at home? How many of you have ever gotten a single word about what to do when you get handed the diagnosis of COVID-19?
They just treat it like the flu. They send you home and they tell you take paracetamol. That's what they do. That's what they do right now in Spain. But the idea, what I'm trying to say, if they send you back, you're going to take the usual thing that you're already taking before the COVID, but that's it.
No wonder. That is a complete and total failure at every level. Okay, let's take the White House. How come we didn't have a panel of doctors assigned to put all their efforts and stop these hospitalizations?
We have Fauci.
Why don't we have doctors who actually treated patients get together in a group and every week give us an update? Why didn't we have that? Why didn't we have that at the state level? 0. Why don't we have any reports about how many patients were treated and spared hospitalizations? I listened to 6 hours of testimony today. 0. We have a complete and total blank spot on treatment.
And that is YouTube blocking a doctor that supposedly knows what he's saying. The idea that you block him, it just makes me feel that you treat us all like kids that have no idea what we're talking about. So literally, YouTube is a 40-year-old man telling an 80-year-old kid, you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what life is, right? And one person that is 40 years old is telling everybody why you're dumb.
It is a blanking phenomenon. At least in the United States, there's some heroes. Now, the American Society of Physicians and Surgeons took the lead. They're the group. They've identified 35 treatment centers in Texas. They know who they are. They have emergency hotlines. They helped Dr. Hall put together this very brief pamphlet, but there's more an extensive one. We can pass it around to everyone that at least gives people half a chance to find out about information, okay? This is a complete and total travesty to have a fatal disease and not treat it. Now, the National Institutes of Health and the Infectious Disease Society of America started putting out guidelines on the treatment of COVID-19, and to this date, they nearly exclusively deal with a hospitalized patient. The 2 papers that I have published as the lead author and supported by wonderful people by Dr. Urso are the only publications in the peer-reviewed literature that tell doctors how to treat COVID-19 as an outpatient based on the support of scientific information. The only 2. The Home Treatment Guide by the American Physicians and Surgeons is the only source of information available to patients on how to treat COVID-19 at home.
Does that make any sense? Nobody is taking into consideration depression and all the other stuff that can happen. No, it's just stay at home, and if you don't have the poke, get the poke.
The only source. So what can be done right here, right now? There's going to be more people that die in Texas, and it's an absolute tragedy. How about tomorrow? Let's have a law that says there's not a single result given out without a treatment guide and without a hotline of how to get into research. Let's put a staffer on this and find out all the research available in Texas, and let's not have a single person go home with a test result with their fatal diagnosis, sitting at home, going into 2 weeks of despair before they succumb to hospitalization and death. It is unimaginable in America that we can have such a complete and total blind spot. I blame the doctors for not stepping up. Where was the medical society stepping up and putting effort on this? How about from the federal and state agencies? There never was a single bit of group collaborative effort to stop the hospitalizations. Nobody even kind of thought about it. Bob Hall had me on a teleconference in April or May, and we're like, wait a minute. How come, where's UT Southwestern? I'm a graduate of UT Southwestern. Where's A&M? Where's the rest of the universities? How come we're not stopping this? How come we are not stopping this? But it gets worse, because in the paper I published in December of 2020, you know what he did? I had a terrific doctor from Brazil. We went through country by country by country and just asked the question, what are other countries doing? When was the last time you turned on the news and ever got a window to the outside world? When did you ever get an update about how the rest of the world is handling COVID? Never. What's happened in this pandemic is the world is closed in on us. There's only one doctor whose face is on TV now. One.
Fauci!
Not a panel. Doctors, we always work in groups. We always have different opinions. There's not a single media doctor on TV who's ever treated a COVID patient. Not a single one. There's not a single person in the White House task force that's ever treated a patient. Why don't we do something bold? Why don't we put together a panel of doctors that have actually treated outpatients with COVID-19 and get them together for a meeting?
Because that's dangerous, right? I mean, they might say something that they don't want that to be out. It might be a personal opinion.
And why don't we exchange ideas? And why don't we say how we can finish the pandemic strongly? Isn't it amazing? Think about this. Think about the complete and total blind spot. So what happened? I can tell you what happened. What happened in around May, it became known that the virus was going to be amenable to a vaccine. All efforts on treatment were dropped. The National Institutes of Health actually had a multi-drug program. They dropped it after 20 patients.
Oh my God. I'm not laughing because this is funny. I'm laughing because this is stupid and delusional. Am I the only one? After 20 patients? Okay, if this guy is lying, okay, maybe he's lying. Maybe they did 100. It's still few. Okay, 1,000. It's still few. The fact that you just dropped it, and just the idea that you said, we're just gonna drop it because I know 100% sure the Pope will solve it. Look at Israel.
Said we can't find the patients. The most disingenuous announcement of all time. And then Warp Speed went full tilt for vaccine development. And there was a silencing of any information on treatment. Any. Silencing. Scrubbed from Twitter, YouTube. Can't get papers published on this. We can't even get information out in our own medical literature on this. There's been a complete scrubbing. So this program has been one of try to reduce the spread of the virus and wait for a vaccine. And when we vaccinate, all efforts have to be on vaccination. And probably if I had 4 hours of vaccination on here. Think about it as we sit here today, the calculations in Texas on herd immunity. The calculations are we're at 80% herd immunity right now with no vaccine effect. 80%. And more people are developing COVID today. They're going to become immune. People who develop COVID have complete and durable immunity. And a very important principle, complete and durable. You can't beat natural immunity. You can't vaccinate on top of it and make it better. There's no scientific, clinical, or safety rationale for ever vaccinating a COVID recovered patient. There's no rationale for ever testing a COVID recovered patient. My wife and I are COVID recovered. Why do we go through the testing outside? There's absolutely no rationale. I'd encourage this committee to actually look at what's being done and ask, is there any rationale? Is there any rationale for anything? Listen, there's plenty of COVID recovered patients. Let them forego the vaccine and let people who are clamoring for it get it. But at 80% herd immunity, in the vaccine trials, fewer than 1% in the vaccine and the placebo actually get COVID, fewer than 1%. The vaccine's going to have a 1% public health impact. That's what the data says. It's not going to save us. We're already 80% herd immune. If we're strategically targeted, we can actually close out the pandemic very well with the vaccine. But strategically targeted. People under 50 who fundamentally have no health risks, there's no scientific rationale for them to ever become vaccinated. There's no scientific rationale. One of the mistakes I heard today as a rationale for vaccination is asymptomatic spread. And I want you to be very clear about this. My opinion is there is a low degree, if any, of asymptomatic spread. Sick person gives it to sick person. The Chinese have published a study, British Medical Journal, 11 million people. They try to find asymptomatic spread. You can't find it. And that's been one of important pieces of misinformation.
I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. For me, I just think it's very weird, especially when they're trying to keep us locked in with all these other things that seems to supposedly kill more people, like the flu, car accidents, suicide because of the lockdown. And I'm like, we have such a focus on that, but we're focusing only on one way. Poke, that's it. And it gets even worse, and anybody that didn't take the poke, we're gonna blame them. The story is about that. Focus on the right thing. Focus on solving things. Stop blaming other people and focus on the ways how you can keep the old people safe. That's what I think is the most important thing. And if there are ways to keep old people safe, do it. That's all I have to say. I'm not against anything else. Do I hate the lockdown? No, because I work from home in the forest and life is Gucci. Do I love it? No, because I see how it affects kids and I have to do my best to take my kids outside because all them kids are getting super fat. And it's horrible. Some of them have like mental issues. It's horrible. And I would like to have a different solution. So if expert doctors know what they're talking about, I'm just surprised why nobody is listening to them, but I do listen to Fauci, the only person standing in front as if he's the lead doctor of everything. I don't know, people. I just think it's fishy. Let me know what you guys think anyway. I thought this was an interesting video. It just popped up on my screen. Happy. And remember to like, share, and do all the stuff. Subscribe, and see you guys next time. Peace.
Don't get me wrong, ma cosa tita bong. Put the fire na mi blonde kush hash purple skunk criollo colombici jam jam turloqueta verdeta welcome. Devidami a tu iniciativa, padrei ku indica e também que sum sativa. Te ainda no que acepta ku eta medicina Bob di nang di eta causa rebeldia. Cooking, ainda saki mi kemen.